Welcome to Math Mini Lessons, and in today's lesson, we're going to practice estimating angles by sight and practice using a protractor. I just went online and typed angle maker tools, and I got this really cool site called biznos.com, so we're going to use it for today in order to make estimates of angles. And there are two angles that we need to be able to recognize from sight, and those are right angles. Like this one is exactly 90 degrees. So for example, the corner of rectangles, those perfect 90-degree angles. Anytime we see them, we need to be able to recognize them. And the second one is a straight angle, 180 degrees. So you can see it as two right angles together, make a perfect 180. These are the two. No matter what, you should be able to see them, recognize them, and as soon as you see them, go 90 degrees or 80 degrees. And that's going to help us with a little bit more of our terminology. So for acute angles are anything less than that 90-degree right angle. So all of these angles all the way to 89.99999, those are acute angles. Even that one, look how close it is, and it's still an acute angle. Some people go, it's little, oh, look how cute. Now, obtuse angles are angles that are bigger than 90 degrees. So anything from this range, these are obtuse angles. From 90.0001 all the way to 179 point whatever. Because as soon as you get to 180, you are at a straight angle. So by sight, we can look at those. The next thing I want you to think about are, what if an angle is bigger than 180? We call these reflex angles, and they're much bigger. And if I kept going, I could make a full 360 or a complete angle. So at 360 is make a full circle, kind of like 360 dunks. That's why they call them that, because they go completely around. So just again reviewing, 0 degrees, you make a 90-degree turn, it's just a right angle. You make a 180, and anything bigger gets to 360 degrees. So we're going to use this, and I'm going to ask us as we're thinking about this to consider, what if we use this 90-degree angle and what we know about fractions to make certain guesses? Like, we can guess what is halfway between 90 and 0. And we can guess that, like, that's that halfway point. So that's 145. So that's going to be another important reference angle. It's the halfway point for a right angle. And its opposite, 135. So we're going to use those. The other tool we're going to use today is going to be a protractor. And we're going to play with those and figure out how to use a protractor to actually check our work. But let's jump into our first model. Here we have an angle. We're trying to figure out what it is. And just by looking at it, you should be able to recognize, is it acute or is it obtuse? So is it greater or smaller than a 90-degree angle? If you are not sure, I like to sometimes take a note card, because I used to do that in school. I used to just take a note card and literally just put it on the line and just rotate it to see, like, all right, is this greater or smaller? Because I know my rectangle has 90-degree angles in it. And so just by looking at it, you can see that this is definitely bigger than a 90-degree angle. So it has to be obtuse. Now, how much bigger is it? As I'm looking at it here and I'm kind of playing with it, well, if this is a straight angle going all the way across, so I'm just looking at it like this, it looks like it's almost halfway between that 90 and 180. So it's a little less than half between 90 and 180. So I'm just going to make a guess and say that maybe this is about 120 degrees. Because the halfway point, remember, was 135. But this looks like it's a little less than halfway between 180 and 90. So that's going to be my guess on this one. So let's try using this protractor. Ma'am, I just put my protractor right over my angle so I can see it. And notice I like to use this little targeting tool, and I like to put it right on the vertex. So just making sure, let's actually make this a little bigger so we can see it. And I know it's right there on the vertex. And remember, my estimate was that it was going to be about 120 degrees, because I knew it was somewhere, it was a little less than 145, but I knew it wasn't less than 90. So that was my guess. Anyway, so I put my protractor and I line it up, and I'm going to start reading it from this side here because I lined up my tool here. It was hard to get it exactly, but this is my 0 mark. And watch how I can just use my protractor to measure, and I just start clicking by tens. Now, sometimes kids start moving like this and they're looking at this number here. That is not the one to look at because we're starting from the 0. So you're really just, as you're moving through these big lines, you're counting them off by tens. So I'm going to use my blue lines just so that you can see how I'm counting. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Well, that wasn't a great straight line. I can draw better than that. 70, 80. There's my 90. That would have been my 90 degrees. 100, 110, 120, and here we are. We're at 130 degrees. So I was not very far off at all. I was only a difference of about 10 degrees. So this angle is absolutely obtuse. And the actual is 100. It looks like it's a little bit at 130 degrees. Okay, so I was only off by 10 degrees. So there you have it for this example. You can see how I used my reference. I used a corner of something like a note card, and I just put it in the corner, and that tells me whether or not it's greater or less than 90 degrees. That's my first hint. And then I use what I know to kind of guesstimate the rest. Like I know the halfway point between 90 and 180, I'm just going to put it here. The halfway point between 90 and 180 would have been 135. So that's the halfway point. My halfway point between 0 and 90 would have been 45. So I use these numbers as my references when I'm measuring angles. 0, 45, 90, 135, and 180. So this is another lesson that just takes practice, especially with protractors, especially if you're doing it on a computer. So take your time, try and make a reasonable estimate. You want to be somewhere within 10 degrees or even less, as accurate as possible. And use your tools and your knowledge to figure this out. Use what you know about right angles and straight angles to make the best guess possible, math marbles. Let's try using some of that logical thinking to sketch an angle. And I'm going to start by using my straight angle as a reference. So I'm just going to draw a straight line. And I'm going to use my right angle. So I'm going to try drawing one in there. So this is my reference. And I have two right angles, 90 degrees and 90 degrees. Now, I'm going to use some more thinking for a minute. I know that I want a 30-degree angle. So I'm going to use a halfway point. So about halfway, I'm just using some fractional skills. So right over here, halfway between 0 and 90 is going to give me 45. So let's just remember that part. So this is about 45 degrees in this middle line. And I want a 30-degree angle, which means it has to be somewhere between 0 and 45. So I'm going to decide, I'm going to use this blue line. And I'm going to guesstimate that this is my 30-degree angle. Let's make it a little thicker so you can really see it. Awesome. Let's make this line a little thicker. So we're going to make that guesstimate that this little angle all the way at the end is equal to 30 degrees. Now, I'm going to take my protractor and I'm going to move it on top of my angle. I want that little targeting system right there in the vertex. You can see that's where it is. And now I can make a count and see how many degrees is it from 0 all the way to the line. And you can use your little tick marks to count them. So let's see if I could actually, I'm going to add it to another screen where I can write on it, and let's see how close we actually were. Magic of editing. So here we go. My targeting system is right here. It's at my vertex. My angle is over here, so I'm starting at 0. And look at all my references that I actually used. So I knew from 0 to 180 was a straight line. And then I knew where my 90 degree was. Here's my 135. And yeah, I was pretty close with figuring out the halfway point was 45. And my goal was to get it as close to 30 degrees as possible. So I'm going to start counting from 0 up. Always count up from 0. So in this case, you can see where my line is. And I'm going to count by tens. These long lines, 10, 20, ta-da, 30. So this was almost exactly 30 degrees. Not bad, miss. So there you have it. That's how I went through the entire step and process for doing a sketch. I used my straight lines first. Just made a straight line. Then I just used another line. So I had my 0, my 180, and I had my 90 as a reference. And then I just used halfway points to just figure out, like, halfway is 135 or halfway on the other side is 45. And that is what I used to help figure out just how big or how small my angle was. Good luck on this game. You'll find that you're going to be off a little bit sometimes. You'll be closer on other times. But the goal is to just use your thinking to get as close to the accurate measure as possible. Have fun, Math Marvels!